I'll teach you a prayer, and you're going to pray it after me. Pray it with your whole heart. The Lord's listening. And I'll say it in my voice, and then I'll do Mother's voice for you. Okay? Jesus in my heart.
Jesus in my heart.
I believe in your tender love for me. I love you, Jesus. So say the whole prayer. Jesus in my heart. I believe in your tender love for me. I love you, Jesus. Do you believe that? Do you believe it? Then let's pray it loudly. Jesus in my heart. I believe in your tender love for me. I love you, Jesus. Now I'll do Mother's voice for you. Jesus, in my heart, I believe in your tender love for me. I love you, Jesus. Amen. So I'm going to ask John, somebody will have to give me a time, because when I speak about someone I love, I'll forget the time. Okay, so you give me a time. But first of all, I'm not surprised that happened with the microphone and the whole audio, because I had a radio interview this afternoon with Archbishop Lestecki for his radio show down in Milwaukee, and the whole thing went nuts. And he didn't know what to say, and he said, oh my gosh, I don't know. He said, wait, let's switch, let's try, let's do this and that. And it wasn't working, and there was so much static and grumbling and awful noises in the line. So he said, you know, Mother, we might have to do it another time. And I said, I'm sure that the creep doesn't want this message out. So I closed my eyes, and I was just to Lucia knows. And I said, Saint Gabriel, clear the lines. And just then, everything went clear. And so Archbishop said, wait, the line's clear. Let's give it a try. So we went through with it. So there's a reason why there's so much interference with this. And that's because the message of Mother Teresa is a powerful one. It's a powerful one for love. It's all about love, bold love. I see so many faces that I recognize from the Milwaukee Archdiocese, my former teachers in the school that I was principal in, and it's a joy to see you all, and all over. But why is it, here we have this topic of Mother Teresa, and I'm gonna give you a whole portrait of her in a second. But before I do, I want to tell you, why is it that we hunger and thirst to study the saints? Now this is, Archbishop Lestecki said, he said, if you would ask anybody, when you think of a contemporary saint, who do you think of? And he said about 80 or 90% of the people would say Mother Teresa. So I want to ask you, why is she the one that comes into your heart, that is the first one or first ones? Tell me one word. Go for it. Love. Right? The human heart hungers for love. So when I bring to you the saint that I watched for 10 years, I was a sister in the Missionaries of Charity for 10 years. I was in college, and I felt I was discerning my vocation. I deeply wanted to be a mother and have a huge family, and I felt deeply in love with Jesus Christ, and I didn't know, what does that look like? What does that mean? And I don't even understand what a vocation is. So Mother happened to be coming to Marquette University, and my roommates were like, we gotta go see Mother. She's at Marquette University. And I said, no. And they said, why? And I knew in my heart that if I went, something would be definitively changed. And I wasn't sure I was up to it. But the rest is history, because my friends took me, they got me a video, and once I watched that, I knew that was my life. So I discerned that and discerned that. And it was one sacrament that was the linchpin for me in understanding my vocation. And that's the sacrament of confession. It somehow cleaned all my pipes out. Everything was totally cleaned out. And my hearing was astute. And it was unmistakable that a powerful love was seizing my heart. And all I could say was yes, yes, yes. So that took me to the Bronx. And Mother had just had her eye surgery. And my first recollection of Mother Teresa, who's 4'11"? Who's 4'11"? Come on. Oh, sorry. Can you stand up? You can't? I'll be a trooper. This is 4'11". She's like teeny tiny. So Mother was really small. And when she would look up at you like this, she was about here. She kind of reminds me of the feistiness of Father Glenn. She was feisty. She had a lot of spunk. And when she walked, she moved it. She walked. She had spunk. But most of all, what I remember is the light in her eyes. When she'd look in your eyes, they were bright blue eyes. And when she'd look into your eyes, it's the closest sense I've ever had of coming near the presence of God. There was zero judgment. There was light, love, and a piercing truth that somehow knew you, understood you. So what I love to share with you is what I saw in the 10 years that I was a sister of this great saint. Now, I'd love to comment, if you bear with me, on this film because of the glitches in it. I think it's very important to share with you. And a couple things. You saw Mother with this tiny little Indian girl. Mother had this huge smile on her face. That was Sister Agnes. She was the first sister that joined Mother, and that was one of her students in high school. And as you were on that train ride, I'm going to take you back in the history of Mother's journey. So she was born in 1910. She heard the call at a very young age to follow our Lord. She came from a family. She had a brother and sister, and her mother and father, and they knew wealth when she was growing up. They weren't extremely wealthy, but they weren't in need either. They had the means. And her father was involved in politics, and somewhere in the picture, he was poisoned. And so they lost him at a very young age. And Mother's mother was a seamstress and did beautiful embroidery and lattice work and tatting and all of this. And so she supported the family. And Mother shared with us a recollection when she was a young girl. She said she and her sister were in the bedroom, and they were chattering away about some teacher they didn't like. They were just saying, oh, he is, he is. And she said she never forgot it. Mother's mother walked up to the bedroom, put her finger on the light switch, and she said, "We do not have money for uncharity." Click. And Mother said to us, it made a profound effect on her as a young woman, how the importance of charity. So she joined the Loretto sisters in 1917. She was a 17-year-old. And she traveled by boat all the way to Ireland, where she joined the Loretto sisters. And they were teaching sisters. So she was a teaching sister, and she eventually was a principal. And her students loved her. Many of them joined the Missionaries of Charity after it was founded. They loved her very, very much. She was an incredible teacher. They said she would look you right in the eye and tell you right off the bat just what wasn't right. And it made the students just rise up out of love to do better. So she joined the Loretto sisters when she was 17, and she never again went back to see her mother. She never saw her mother again. So it gives you the beginning glimpse of the bravery of this young woman, 17-year-old. She was sent to teach in Calcutta. And that, like you saw that school there, they had a school for young people. And part of the history was that mother, she would be praying in her room, and she would see on the streets just this anguish and this fighting and this starvation to be listened to. So I'm going to fast forward you a little. When I met Mother in the South Bronx, I can remember one of the first things she said to me. She said, "Sister, United States, so poor, so poor." And we just sat there in the refectory, which is a place you eat. We were waiting, just hanging on, because we come from such opulence. We have everything we possibly need in our culture. Even the poor, right, have so much help. And then Mother said, "People are starving for love because everyone is in such a great rush." The poverty of not being loved. The poverty of not being loved. The homes that I got to be with Mother were in the South Bronx, Harlem, Brooklyn, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Tijuana, Mexico, Washington, D.C., Phoenix, Arizona. And she would come very frequently, a lot more than we as Americans know. She always came in under the radar. She'd come as quiet as she could. And the most beautiful thing, like when she would come in the house, you would know she was in the house. You would know she was in the convent. It was electric. That's all I can say. There was an electricity of love. Everybody was hustling and bustling, and Mother would come and she would walk right in the middle of us, and we'd be talking and say, "Do you know if Mother's here yet? She must be here." And Mother would just walk right in the middle of you. Just right there. So what can I tell you that is the most powerful thing about, as we look at this saint, is how she loved. How she loved. When you think right now, I want you to close your eyes. Don't focus on anything else. Because if you come away with the nugget of being set on fire to love Jesus Christ more, then that is the greatest thing of all. Think of, when you think of a saint, what is it that attracts you? What is it that makes you want to know more? What is it most of all? Humanness, won't you say? The humanness of the person. Please tell me, besides all of these things, please tell me that there's some humanness that I too can hope I can connect to and aspire to. So I want to share with you some of Mother's humanness. She had a great love for the United States political system. I bet you didn't know that. She said democracy had tremendous hope. She said if love isn't free, then love isn't. It's the greatest quality of love. So we stand in our country the greatest chance to be the greatest saints. We're very free. We're free to love, and we're free to pursue holiness. And I remember when I was stationed in Washington, D.C., she gave a speech in Congress. And at that time, President Clinton was there. And she preached on the sacredness of human life. And she didn't prepare a talk. She never liked preparing anything. So I follow her suit. I say if it's not in my heart, then I don't have anything to give you. It has to be in my heart to give it. So Mother gave this speech about the sacredness of human life. And all the many, many things we do, if we don't slow down to love, then we've lost it all. Because in the end, that's all we've got. That's all we've got is how we love the person next to us, right? So one day she was giving this talk in the Congress, and before she gave that talk, there was husbands and wives gathered in a certain area, a whole bunch of them. And she said to them, she said, "Husband, look at your wife." And it got real quiet, one of the sisters said. And then she said, "Wife, look at your husband." And she said everybody was kind of like, where's Mother going with this, And then they said, Mother said, "Wife, smile at your husband." So you got to do it, Denise. And then she said, "Husband, smile at your wife." And then she said, "He or she is your greatest benefactor. They're the one helping you get to heaven. They're precious, precious treasure. Never take them for granted." So when Mother came in the States and she spoke at this Congress, one of the things she told them was, like I said, the sacredness of life and the preciousness of the everyday stuff that we do. She said, we look for these great things so high and exalted as a way to holiness, but she said it really comes down to the most simple things. Doing your homework, Catherine. Washing dishes. Seeing the 150th patient. Precious doctors in this room who are the love and the hands of Jesus, right? All the simple, mundane things that we take for granted. Making dinner for your husband. Working all those hours in an office, tired and coming home and saying, what's it all about? And you're supporting a parish and keeping it thriving and alive. All these little, simple things that we take for granted, she said, are the nuts and bolts of sanctity. That's it. That's what it's reduced to. There's a lot of volunteers that would come and try to help. And they would come far off distance, many of them from the U.S., and they come to Calcutta, they come to Bangladesh and Mexico, and I was in Mexico, longing to find and serve Jesus. And many of them, and it's a very common thing, this bracelet, right? Do you know which one I'm talking about? What would Jesus do? Do you know what Mother said about that bracelet? Not what would Jesus do. Ask Jesus, what would you have me do? And it was so refreshing because it's true. What Jesus would do, second person of the Blessed Trinity, and what I, a little daughter of his, I just got to know what he wants me to do. So I think with Mother, I was asked today on the radio, what is one of the greatest gifts Mother gave you? Relationship. Relationship with Jesus Christ. How to talk to him. How to listen to him. How to love him. How to be loved by him. He's living. He's alive. He's loving. He has tender eyes. Mother said, do you know him? Not from books, but from being with him in your heart. Ask for the grace. He's longing to give it. Ask for the grace. He's longing to give it. Can I tell you a couple stories? Okay. So one story, I was a young sister and I was stationed in San Francisco, and Mother was in the house. And we were taking medical supplies down to San Francisco. We were going to leave San Francisco and head down on Highway 1. And there weren't a lot of drivers, but I was one of the drivers, only by default, because I was one of the few Americans and I had a driver's license, so for no other reason. So I was so excited and I was so scared. I was so excited, I was so scared. So I got in the van, I got in the driver's seat, and I was just like, Mother, Mother. So I was sitting there, and then Mother came in, and she couldn't get her leg up. And she was trying to get her leg up. And I was looking at her, and then my superior said, help her. Okay, then I helped her. And then I got her in. And then I looked at her, and she looked up at me with these, her eyes were so sweet. And I looked at her, and I said, I love you. And she said to me, Sister, God bless you. And then I felt like, then I sat there, and then she was trying to put her seatbelt in. And I said, do I help? Do I not help? No, that's silly. I can't help her with her seatbelt. And then she looked at me and she said, Sister, help Mother. And I said, Then I put her seatbelt in. Then she took these great big Albanian hands and went, God bless you, like that. Then we started driving, and we were on the highway, and it was very hot. We were driving, and I was getting, after about an hour and a half, 2 hours, everybody was chattering away in the van, just chattering away, and then I was getting kind of sleepy, and then Mother noticed it, and she always had her rosary, and Mother noticed it, and she said, Sister's tired? And I said, I was like, no, Mother. And then she said, Sister's hungry? I said, yes, Mother. And then she said, Sister, you pull over. So we pulled over, and there was a BP station attached to a McDonald's. And there was this dad with his little daughter, and she had a real pretty dress on. And they gave me some money and said, go in and get what you want, and hurry up though. So I ran in, and when I came out, I was like, yeah, because for an American to have a cheeseburger and the Missionaries of Charity is like, no comparison. So I was about to talk and make a lot of noise, and then the sisters all went, shh, like that. So I got in my seat and hopped in, and Mother was sharing what she saw. So this is a contemplative heart in action. So this dad was telling his little daughter, he said, honey, use 2 hands. That's a 2-hand sandwich. And she said, Dad, I can do it. And he said, better use 2 hands. It's going to go all over you. And then the little girl said, Dad, I can do it. So she took a great big bite out of her sandwich. And all the ketchup and mustard went down her pretty dress. And then what did the dad do? He reached across the table, and her mouth was full of ketchup and mustard, and he reached across the table and kissed her smack on the lips. Then he took out his handkerchief, and he wiped her face, and he wiped his face, and he jammed it back in his pocket, and he went back to eating. And then she said, Daddy, I'm sorry. And he said, that's okay, babes. And then she said, Daddy, I love you. And she swung her arms around his neck and she kissed him. And then Mother turned to us and she said, and sisters, that is what Jesus does with Mother every day. So, contemplative in action. Why is she canonized in this year of mercy? I have a hint. I have a little bit of knowledge. What did Mother think of herself? at least what she shared with us, she thought she was very simple and very ordinary. She thought she wasn't smart enough to do it. She thought Jesus made a mistake. She thought someone else should be doing it. She was praying someone else would do it. That one sister that you saw with in another order with the white veil, that was Mother's order. And she said about Mother, she was a good for nothing. She couldn't even light a candle. Mother was grounded in her poverty. And I think what she imparted to us as daughters is not to be fearful of our poverty. We don't necessarily understand what that spiritual poverty is. But that poverty, Little Flower talks about it. There's a book called, oh, I have a surprise for you, it's here. This book is called The Love That Keeps Us Sane. And there's one of the first sentences in the book, and she says, it's a quote from Saint Teresa. She said, I truly think that if the saints could come back and hear what we say about them, they wouldn't recognize themselves. And her point was sometimes we make them far different than what they are, but they're very much like you and I, except they excelled in love. That's the witness we have of Mother Teresa. She excelled in love. She excelled in love. I have a memory of her walking through our AIDS home, and there was a man called Fred, and Fred had a mohawk, and it was multicolored, and it was like this. And Mother walked through, and she said, oh, Fred, Fred. And she could never say Fred. And she'd say it like several times, just trying to say it, Fred. And then Fred would say, Fred. Like that. And it was just so funny. It was so humorous, just the simplicity of it. She was so simple. No pretense. No fluff. I remember the sisters once took Mother's sandals. Her sandals are now encased in glass casing in Calcutta. But they took her sandals because they were so beaten up. And they said, we had a shoemaker in San Francisco. We always called him Geppetto, so I don't know what his real name is. but we all took our sandals to Geppetto, that's all I know. And we saw Mother's sandals, these holy novices that we were, and we're like, let's surprise Mother. You know, and so one of the sisters took her sandals to Geppetto, and Geppetto was like, these sandals that will get Mother different sandals. Mother was the only time, I think in my 10 years, I ever saw Mother upset. Where's Mother's sandals? Where's Mother's sandals? Get Mother's sandal. And then everyone was saying, Mother, your sandals are... Give Mother sandal. Sandal. And so everybody had to go get her sandals. And then later she gave us a talk. She said, you live your vow of poverty, I'll live mine. It was the only time I heard her upset. Because it got in the way of her relationship with Jesus Christ. And that was what she imparted to us. Let nothing get in the way of your relationship with Jesus Christ. Number one, relationship. She said, the best way to give Jesus to others is by you being in love with him. We would try to beat Mother in the chapel in the morning. The bell would ring at 4:40, boom, boom, and you sleep in a large dormitory, many cots, all lined up. You hop out of bed, and the first thing you hear, let us bless the Lord. And then everyone answers, thanks be to God. Then you pray a morning prayer. Then you have exactly 15 minutes to brush your teeth, run to the bathroom, get dressed by candlelight, as fast as you can, there's 40 sisters run into the same bathrooms. And our goal all the time was, we're going to beat Mother. How can it be? She's in her late 70s, early 80s. How can a 25-year-old not beat her? So a bunch of us got together and we said, let's plan this one. Let's skip teeth brushing altogether. So that was our plan. We said, we're not going to brush our teeth till later. And we're going to try to hit the bathroom, brush our teeth later, and just get in the chapel. So that day, bell rings, let us bless the Lord, and we're praying that prayer as fast as we can. Oh, Jesus, through the most pure heart of, and the superior is slowing you down. Through the most pure heart of Mary. And then you're praying this morning prayer. Then as soon as the morning prayer ends, you start getting dressed as fast as you can. And your sari starts, you put a cincture on, and your sari starts here, and you go wrap, 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 all the way around, wrap, pin. You have to go really fast. Crucifix in your side. Okay, quick, skip teeth. Bathroom line is too long. You run in the chapel, and there is Mother. So we got in the chapel, we said, how is that so? And Mother looked like she had been there maybe a minute. So it was pretty close. So the next day we said, we got it. We're going to go to bed in our sari. That's the way it goes. So that night, we slept with our whole sari on, everything put. The goal was to get to the chapel before Mother, and the goal was to see what was in Mother's prayer book. Because as missionaries of charity, you were only allowed 3 prayer cards in your prayer book. And we were all dying to see what was in Mother's prayer book. So that day I slept in my sari, got up, bell rang, said our prayer, skip bathroom, skip teeth brushing, and you're already put together. Run in the chapel. Nobody's here. So I knelt down, and there were Mother's books. Her prayer book, her divine office, and her Bible. And so I was kneeling there, and I looked at her prayer book. And do you know what was in there, the 3 pictures? Do you want to know? See, you're just as bad. So I opened it up, and inside, the first prayer, it was a picture of Jesus on the cross, and I was looking at it, and it said, I looked for one to comfort me. And in Mother's handwriting written below, I will be the one. Then the next picture was Mary, a picture of Our Lady Immaculate Heart. Written in Mother's handwriting, Mary, Mother of Jesus, be a mother to me now. The third picture was the Holy Spirit. It was when I looked at the third picture that I felt this. And then I looked up, and Mother looked at me and she said, Sister, what's your name? And Mother had given me my name. I said, Sister John Fisher, Mother. She said, Sister? Which meant go find your spot. So I found my spot, and I was like, oh no. And then I came over, and then all the sisters, as soon as we were coming out of the chapel, Mother would give you a blessing in the morning. She couldn't bless you, but she'd put her hand on her crucifix, and she'd say, may God bless you, like that. So as we were coming through, as she got to me, she went like this. And she just held your head like a football. You're like this. And I just sat there, and then she lifted my face up like this, and she said, Sister, God bless you, like that. Then I left the chapel, and everybody was asking me about it. The other memory I have of Mother was funny. She had a sense of humor. She was like a child. She loved vanilla ice cream. She loved See's chocolates. She loved a good skit. And whenever she came in the house, she loved to hear, she'd always say, put a play on for Mother, put a play on. So my experiences of Mother was, I was such a young sister in her latter years. So when I joined in 1988, and I was sent home due to my asthma in 1998, I knew Mother in the last years of her life, the last 10 years, in her late 70s through her 80s. So my recollection of Mother is very different than the early sisters. I used to ask the early sisters, some of the older ones, tell me about Mother. What was she like? Oh, she was feisty. And I said, what do you mean, like, what'd she do? Oh, she'd make you, if you were cold and she told you to walk with your blanket to church and you didn't want to do that because of vanity, she'd have you wear that blanket a long time. I said, wow, that's amazing. Because the Mother I knew later was just very gentle and motherly and funny, a practical joker. She loved humor, and she loved to joke. So let's see, what would be a beautiful thing to share with you the most? Maybe, I think my memory of her as she spoke with others. Present, very present moment. There'd be a lot of people buzzing all around her, talking to her, Mother this, would you sign this, would you do this? And she'd be totally focused on just the one person she was talking to. Everybody would be pulling her, but she was just focused on one person. That's it. Holiness, she said, is only a very high degree of love. It's slowing down to love. So here we are in this auditorium. We come from so many different walks of life, don't we? I recognize so many faces. It's so beautiful. We all come, here it is a Monday, and you've been at work, and you had a full day of work, and some of you are probably thinking, I would imagine, that's really neat to hear about Mother Teresa. But I don't know if sanctity is something I can even strive for. It looks really difficult. It looks really painful. It looks really impossible. If I have to go through a whole bunch of horrible stuff, I don't know if I can do it. The answer is love. We can all love. She said, love is a fruit that's within every one of our reach. So every single one of us here has the ability and the capacity to be a saint. Somebody said to Mother, they said, Mother Teresa, I remember when we were at the Basilica in Washington, D.C., and they said, Mother Teresa, how does it feel to be a living saint? And I can't even remember Mother's expression other than it was like the most absurd kind of comment, you know. And then they said something again, and then Mother said, holiness isn't the luxury of the few, but it is the simple duty of you and me. It's the duty to be holy, the duty to cooperate with God's grace. So I want to tell you, when I was about in my, I'd say late 20s or early 30s, Mother was in our house in San Francisco. And I remember telling her, one of my brothers was in the Gulf War at the time. My parents had just separated. My heart was breaking into pieces. Every ounce of me wanted to go home and fix it all. And Mother looked at me and she said a very prophetic thing. She grabbed my face and she said, Sister, she said, all of this will happen, but you must pray and fast, and your father will come back to your mother. It'll be blessed in the church. Your brother will be safe, but not for many years. Prophetically, every single thing happened. The power of her prayer life. Another time, I remember when she was giving us a talk as young sisters. Then I'm going to watch our time. I bet it's time. John? Okay, because I want to give them questions too. Okay. I figure questions are more fun than anything. So, but I thought I'd tell you. So I was probably in my late 20s or early 30s, and Mother was giving us a talk about our vocation of consecrated life. And I had this war going on in my heart. It was before my vows. And it's the timing of all these things, how God works. So my brother's wives, my older brother's wife, sent a picture of their baby. And my younger brother and his wife sent a picture also of expecting a baby. Then one of my best friends sent a picture of her baby. And I felt the whole world was having a baby. And so I went into the chapel. And I sat behind the altar. We had an altar and the tabernacle was here. And I came and sat behind the altar. And I remember very clearly, Mother beforehand had said to me, she told us you have to get the answer from Jesus. Anybody can tell you all these things, but you've got to hear it from him yourself. That relationship has to be between you and him. You got to hear it. So I went in the chapel. I was crying my eyes out. And I said, how can it be? How is it, Jesus? I want 10 children and I want you. How is that going to be? And so I grabbed the Bible that was on the altar behind me and I opened it up. And that morning, I couldn't eat breakfast because my heart was such in a turmoil. I was crying my eyes out. And I opened the Bible to first chapter of Samuel 1. And my eyes fell apart. And I said to Jesus, Mother said, ask Jesus. Ask Jesus in the Word. So I opened the Word and I said, speak to my heart. And the passage was, and Elkanah said to his wife, Hannah, why do you not eat? And why do you weep? And why do you afflict your heart? Am I not better to you than 10 children? And I just said, yes! Yes, yes, yes. And I never stopped saying yes. And that is the most beautiful thing I can share with you about Mother. She said, holiness comes down to one word. It's a very hard word. But the more we say it, she said, it becomes the source of all our joy is yes to God. Yes, yes. Whatever you want, yes. That's surrender with trust, with love. So I think, coming, I have a surprise for you. You're going to flip. But before I do, I'm going to read you one little passage, because it's the Holy Spirit always, he speaks through the liturgy. And this is so beautiful because it's in the liturgy today. It's from today is Saint Januarius. So one of my Italian sisters had a big long story about Saint Januarius and his blood. It comes liquid and comes hard. That's all I know. But this passage is so beautiful, and it really summarizes Mother. For my Redeemer has a claim upon my love, and I do not forget how he questioned Peter and asked, do you love me, Peter? Then feed my sheep. He asked this once, then again, then a third time. He inquired about his love, and then he gave him work to do. For the greater one's love is, the easier is the work. So it comes down to love. Love makes everything beautiful. Love is the source. I'm going to read you this last letter, and then we'll go. Close your eyes. This is a letter that Mother gave us. I remember exactly where I was stationed, but it's a very powerful letter. And allow the Lord to speak to you in this. Just listen. Jesus wants me to tell you again how much love He has for each one of you, beyond all you can imagine. I worry some of you still have not really met Jesus one-to-one, you and Jesus alone. We may spend time in the chapel, but have you seen with the eyes of your soul how He looks at you with love? Do you really know the living Jesus? Not from books, but from being with Him in your heart. Have you heard the loving words He speaks to you? Ask for the grace. He is longing to give it. Until you can hear Jesus in the silence of your own heart, you will not be able to hear Him say, "I thirst," in the hearts of the poor. Never give up this daily intimate contact with Jesus as the real living person, not just the idea. Be careful of all that can block that personal contact with the living Jesus. The devil may try to use the hurts of life and sometimes our own mistakes to make you feel it is impossible that Jesus really loves you and is really cleaving to you. And this is the danger for us all. And so sad, because it's completely opposite of what Jesus is really wanting and waiting to tell you. Not only that He loves you, but even more that He longs for you. He misses you when you don't come close. He thirsts for you. He loves you always, even when you don't feel worthy, when not accepted by others, even by yourself sometimes. He is the one who always accepts you. My children, you don't have to be different for Jesus to love you. Only believe you are precious to Him. Bring all you are suffering to His feet and open your heart to be loved by Him as you are. He will do the rest. So the core of Mother came down to two things. I thirst, the thirst of God for our love, for your love. He thirsts for your love. He thirsts for your love. And Mother said, to return that love, the whole gospel comes down to one hand. He says, Matthew 25, you did it to me. The whole gospel on one hand. You did it to me. Whoever that person is, the person in front of us at Walgreens, the person next to us on the road, the person in the grocery store, the person in the bathroom here, whoever it is. He said, Mother said to slow down, take the time to greet Jesus and the other person. And she would go like this when she would pass you. And she said, I bow to Jesus in you. Jesus dwelling in your soul. Jesus dwelling in your soul. It gives us the place of our great reverence and love for one another, made in the image and likeness of God.